The Giants announced their initial 53-man roster for the 2024 season, and we're about 11 days away before the home opener. So in today's Blue Rush, we're talking cuts, the 53, and give you guys a generic season preview because Giants football is officially back, baby. Well, longtime Giants beat writer for the Post, Paul Schwartz, he's back. He's heading into another year covering the Giants. So let's give you guys a training camp recap episode of Blue Rush. Paul, cut day. For a guy like me, NFL journeyman, cut day was never a fun day, but for media, the fans, and the guys that made the 53, it's a beautiful day because now you can put training camp to bed and just start worrying about the season, the opening season. How you feeling, my man?
I'm feeling good. You know what? I would agree with that almost, right? You know, like you said it right. Initial 53-man roster. So there's still a big. Don't forget, you have 16 practice squad guys you got to fill out, plus one international. So that's 17 practice squad spots. There will be the waiver wire coming Wednesday, afternoon, and so the Giants will probably pick up a few guys. What happens when you pick up a few guys, Brandon? Right?
The guys got to go. Yep.
You got to tell guys who made the initial 53 that there's no place for them on the first week 53. So, yes, this is a rough time. And you know what's so interesting, Brandon? You could probably speak to this is, the NFL is it's just so rough that very rarely you don't get a call, right? People don't get a call saying, hey, Brandon, hey, it's so-and-so, so-and-so, or you made the team. It's more like you get a call saying, you know what, Brandon, come down and, bring the playbook and, the coach wants to meet with you, right? Then you didn't make the team. But nobody really says officially on that day, congratulations, you made the team, because it's so fluid. I mean, it's a tough day. And now that the cuts come so consolidated from 90 to 53, I mean, I think I read somewhere that in the last day and a half, almost 1,000 players will lose jobs. So, it's a rough day. Yeah.
Paul, you just scared me, man. I got a flashback when you called. I was about to pick up my phone. It was like, I got to see Coach Coughlin again? Come on. You're a method actor, man. It sounds like you've done that before. But, yeah, absolutely. I think the thing that's different, though, but from my day, we called it the 53 plus 8 because it was the 53-man roster and only 8 practice squad guys. Now it's like you got a whole JV team of practice squad guys where you can have 17 on there. So, and a bigger difference is guys who have played in the league, who have kind of vet experience, can be put on the practice roster. And that's what I like, because you see in late November, December, when injuries hit a team, that practice squad guy is now a potential starter and key contributor. So the practice squad thing I think the name should be changed because, I mean, it's just different from my dynamic. And that's my little back in the day moment. So let's talk about some of the cuts that that kind of threw us off, or we maybe were expecting. And I think the biggest thing that I wasn't expecting was for the receiver room. Bryce Ford-Wheaton beating out Isaiah Hodgins and Allen Robinson, both guys who've had success in the NFL. Isaiah Hodgins came in 2022 and pretty much led the team in receiving touchdowns, 7 touchdowns over the last 2 years. But I get it, Paul. I don't think. And, when we talk, I don't think as a player anymore. I have to think as a GM. Bryce Wheaton Ford can play special teams. That's a guy that can get out there and play special teams. Isaiah Hodgins and Allen Robinson, could they? Probably, but at their age, being vets, no, you're not going to give that same type of effort as a Ford Wheaton who wants to really make a name for himself. So I see that casualty when it came to Isaiah Hodgins and Allen Robinson.
Look, I mean, Allen Robinson has played 10 years in the league. He's a good player. Now, you saw him in training camp. He did not exactly light it up. He was playing a lot with 2s and the 3s. He clearly has lost something. Is he a better, if it's 3rd and 6, would you rather have him out there or Bryce Ford-Wheaton? I think you'd probably rather have Allen Robinson because, by muscle memory, he can probably run a 7-yard out and catch the ball. But it's like Bill Parcells used to say, what makes me want to give you a uniform on game day? What is the reason? Not to be the 5th receiver, right? To be the 5th receiver. It's got to be special teams. So, I talked to Allen Robinson after the last preseason game, and I'm not saying he knew it, but he sort of knew it. That look, he can count. He's been on a bunch of different teams. Now they do want him back in the practice squad, I believe. So we'll see what happens there. He's going to have to kind of, check his ego at the door if he wants to be on a practice squad and wants to, continue his career, or see if somebody else wants to pick him up and put him on their roster. Isaiah Hodgins, right? He caught 7 touchdown passes in 2022. He caught a touchdown pass in the playoffs. He's a decent receiver. He's a big guy. He gives him a little something different with his size. He certainly knows the offense, but he doesn't play special teams. And what is the reason he gets a uniform on game day? To be the 5th receiver? Don't forget, there are 4 spots on this receiver core that are just completely locked up. And it's not, you have guys like Miles Boykin, who was a receiver, who also got cut, and he is a total special teamer. So it's special teams. It's kind of like the stepsister. Nobody really thinks about it much, but you got to feel the special teams crew, and that's why a lot of the guys, if you're not a starter, you better play special teams. Hodgins and Allen Robinson were not starters, so they had to go.
And when we flip it to the defensive side, I guess, when a lot of people are like, Darnay Holmes got cut, and then you see some of the videos that were posted about a lot of the penalties that he had throughout the years. He was really good in special teams. He showed up on special teams, but there was a day in the joint practice, Paul, where the rookie Drew Phillips, who got drafted in the 3rd round, when he got into it with Amon-Ra St. Brown of the Lions and showed that he had some dog in him. That moment there was where they were like, okay, this is going to be our projected starter as that nickel corner. And that is, I believe, that moment got Darnay Holmes and Trey Herndon cut. Is there anybody on the defensive side that kind of shocked you in terms of being released? And do you think that, again, because now that the initial 53 is made, do you think they bring in anybody, claim somebody off of waivers to help out on defense, especially in the secondary?
Well, after that joint practice with the Lions, somebody in the front office talking about Drew Phillips used one word to me off the record. He said, dude. The guy is a dude. You know what I mean? He said dog, dude, same basic thing, right? I was a little surprised they re-signed Darnay Holmes this year. He has been a good special teams player. He just never got any traction as a defensive back, as a cornerback, And he got a lot of opportunity. He got a lot of game time. He got, about a dozen starts. And so I think he started both playoff games in 2022. But no, that's not a surprise. At some point you want to over-recruit the guys that are on your roster. That's all there is to it, unless you've got a roster that's winning 12, 13, 14 games every year, which the Giants certainly do not. There were no big surprises to me on defense at all. I still think that's a little bit of a work in progress. And I do think they certainly will look for cornerbacks on the waiver wire. I think that's a priority. Maybe defensive linemen. We'll talk in a second about some of the guys who made the team. Some mild surprises, I would think. It's some years when you have 90 players, right? And then I'm trying to think in my head, okay, you got to cut down to 53. Sometimes I get to like 60, right? And I write them down. I say, man, I got 60 guys here. So they're going to cut some guys I think are pretty good. And some years I get to like 47. And it's like, I got to keep 6 more players here. You know what I mean? I got to just start throwing guys on the roster here. And this year, I think it was right around 50, I would say. 48, 49, 50, where I'm like, okay, these guys I could see their role. I could see what they're going to be if they're not starters. It makes sense. And then the last 4 or 5 spots, I'm like, well, I guess I'll put this guy on and that guy on. I think this guy will make it. So I think those are the guys that'll be interchangeable if they come up with something better, off the waiver wire. But, overall, I think the roster is better than last year, but I don't know by how much. And I think the bottom of the roster is still questionable as far as depth. In some spots, I think really questionable.
We'll talk about that, Paul. Go into it even more for us. I mean, when you looked at when the Giants tweeted out their initial 53, your initial reaction was what?
I think they're a little light on the defensive line. You know what I mean? Now, look, Elijah Chapman's a great story, right? The guy's, I mean, you're how tall? 6'3"?
6'4", 6'5"?
I mean, he's 6 foot. On a good day, he's 6 foot. You know what I mean? That's just, if you're not Aaron Donald, you better not be 6 foot and be a defensive lineman. But he is. He's 6 foot. Like, I don't even think he's 280. Undrafted from SMU, and he's like a bowling ball. He had the great play in the preseason game where he ran down the running back about 40 yards down the field. So, people said, well, that made the team for him, that play. Well, it didn't, but it certainly helped. He's been a consistent player. Good for him. Great story. I don't know if he's exactly what they want there. I would be surprised if he gets a uniform on game day right now. So I think they're a little light there. I think they're very light at cornerback. I just, I don't even know who the starting second cornerback is opposite Tay Banks. Is it Cordell Flott? Is it Nick McLeod? I don't think they can pick one up now to start in 11 days. But so that's a rough spot. I think their backups are, Isaiah Simmons, the linebacker, is listed as a cornerback. And, maybe against some tight ends and some big receivers, you know what I mean? Maybe I could foresee him lining up against you in the day, unless you just run right by him, which is a problem. But if you don't, maybe he can stay with you in short area. You know what I mean? But not a Wan'Dale Robinson type guy. So we'll see. That's going to have to be a very touchy thing, how they do that. Trey Hawkins is on the team. He was at this time last year, he was a starter, right? He was a rookie starter. We were all stunned. And 2 games into the season, he was not a rookie starter anymore. I think the inside linebacker crew after Bobby Okereke, I like Micah McFadden. I think he's a solid starter, but he's been hurt. Then you have a bunch of guys. Benton Whitley made the team. Great story from Holy Cross. We'll see if he's on the team when game day comes, and he could be a casualty type guy. He's a special teams kind of guy. So I Carter Coughlin is still there. He's a special teamer almost exclusively. So there's some spots that are a little rough. I think there are. It was a tough break that Isaiah McKenzie is on IR. He'll miss the whole season with a foot injury. I think 2-3 weeks ago, I thought he was going to be the kick returner. He was from Buffalo. He's from the Bills. Shane knows him. Daboll knows him. Really didn't get a lot going in the summer. Then he got hurt. He just got hurt. So that's it for him. So, just like your guy, Lawrence Cager, right? The tight end who got cut. We talked about this a few times during the summer. He can catch the ball. He can catch the ball. And this is not around the league, people are going to look at this tight end group of Daniel Bellinger and Theo Johnson and Chris Manhertz, and they're going to be like, who, and who, right? People know Bellinger because he's played, but it's not a who's who of guys in the league here. And so there was a spot for Cager, but he had an injury. He came back and got hurt again. You can't make the team that way.
This is one of those hard knocks moments, I feel as though, because this would be great for Joe Schoen, because I feel as that there's someone out there that hasn't been claimed off the waivers, whether it's a DB, whether it's another defensive lineman or that tight end. There's a piece that he sent his scouts out to go identify, because when you think about his approach to kind of shoring up a roster, he doesn't bring in high-priced rentals. When he brought in Isaiah Hodgins, at the moment, we were like, this is a Kia. This man's renting a Kia, but he gave you Porsche production almost for the rest of that season. And obviously, it was down. His production was down last year, but everyone on the offense. So Joe Schoen in this scouting department has done a pretty solid job of going out there and getting guys that kind of grow into a role. And for all the people who think that, go trade for this guy or go try and spend money on this free agent, that's yes, he's a vet, but hasn't gone through camp or anything. I don't see this regime. I don't see Joe Schoen and those guys doing that. So all eyes are going to be on who they claim off of waiver wires and how long it takes for that player to kind of be a key contributor. But when I first looked at the roster, Paul, I was like, man, half the team's got to be carded to get into the club. This is a young squad. And when you look at some of the key contributors and starters, darn near the whole rookie class has to play. Theo Johnson, Malik Neighbors, Drew Phillips, the linebacker Musa, who may have to play and start for Micah McFadden, who's injured. Tyler Nubin looks like he's going to be the starter at free safety. This entire rookie class is going to have to go out there and get baptized by fire. So when we get into like the first 4 games predictions of what we think they can be, I think fans have to kind of have expectations, because I remember my dad was starting a true freshman one year. My dad's a college football coach, and it was like the kid would make a play, then he'd throw an interception, and I'm like, oh man, you got a true freshman quarterback playing for you. He was like, the thing about a true freshman is like he throws a pick, you're like, oh, it's a true freshman, but then he makes a play, and you're like, it's a true freshman, you know. He's got years to play, so it's going to be some growing pains with this young group. But at the same time, that's just where this roster is. So I expect Joe Schoen in this. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, a couple of things just about pickups, right? Jason Pinnock 2 years ago was cut by the Jets.
Yep.
Giants picked them up. You know, you can get guys. You know, they're not going to be top of the line guys, but they're guys that can help your team. You know, Pinnock is now a pretty established starter. I think Nick McLeod also they picked off waivers. You know, he's a guy who's a contributor. You mentioned the youth. Yes, there's a lot of youth everywhere except where, Brandon? Where is there not a lot of youth?
Offensive line, right?
Yep. Now, the one thing is when you look at who gets cut, right? You say, okay, Joe Schoen cut Marcus McKeith in one of his draft picks, right? He cut Darian Beavers. Darian Beavers, one of his draft picks. You know, he cut. You know, you know, you don't want to cut your own draft picks, but he did it. Sometimes you have to do it, right? But the offensive line, he tried. You know, Josh Azudu has not been cut, but he has not been what they thought he was. He was a 3rd-round pick 2 years ago, right? So he has not developed. So what happens when that happens? Evan Neal, not developed, right? He was the number 7 pick 2 years ago, has not developed. So Joe Schoen kind of took that we're going to build this young offensive line together. We're going to have a bunch of young studs. Didn't work. So what did he do? Jermaine Illuminor, right tackle. Greg Van Roten, guard, starting guard.
Yep.
John Runyon Jr., starting guard, right?
Yep.
You add up your experience in the NFL, 20 years for those 3. 20 years. So you got a young veteran stud in Andrew Thomas and a second-year guy who you really have to rely on, John Michael Schmidt. You have to rely on him, second-year center. But there's all experience around them. Now, are these guys they brought in stud players? Not one of them has ever been in a Pro Bowl, but they're guys who know what they're doing. It should help elevate the line. But that, you know, they went against youth there. They said, the heck with this. We're going to bring in guys we know who can play. We're going to, you know, they played Runyon good money. They paid Illuminor decent money. They didn't pay Van Roten much of anything, really. So they brought these guys in and says, you know, Van Roten is like a 1-year stopgap probably. Illuminor maybe you get a couple of years out of. He's 29 years old. Runyon's a young guy at 26. So, you know, different approaches here because they know they can't be screwing around with these young offensive linemen who we saw last year and often did not know what they were doing. These guys at least will know what they're doing.
So half the roster, you got to sneak into the club, but the O-line group is the old guys in the club, still doing the electric slide and stuff and the stanky leg. We talked about the young babies that are going to have to be baptized by the fire, but the babysitters were announced, the captains, Daniel Jones, Dexter Lawrence, Bobby Okereke, Chris Kreider, Casey Kreider. I'm missing one more. Am I missing one more? Casey Kreider,
Dexter Lawrence, Andrew Thomas.
Andrew Thomas, yeah.
Yeah, Andrew Thomas. Yeah, 2 on offense, 2 on defense. You got Daniel Jones and Andrew Thomas on offense, Bobby Okereke, Dexter Lawrence on defense, and Casey Kreider special teams. And you know what? You and I were the only ones basically who were not captains the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, do you need 10 team captains for 53 players? I mean, do you really? I saw that. And you know what? I made a point in my Post Sports Plus column that's on our website, New York Post website, you know, Wednesday morning. It was posted that, you know, when you name 10, you vote in 10 captains, you know, Daboll wanted a lot of captains. I think it's almost counterproductive because when you have 5, it's a select group, right? It's a select group. And you can understand who are veterans, guys who've been here before, we get it. When you have 10, I think the 11th and 12th and 13th guy think, really? We have 10 captains and I'm not one of them? You know what I mean? There are 10 guys out there and I couldn't be one of them. You know, Brian Burns is a newcomer. He's not a captain. Kayvon Thibodeau has been around, he's one of the premier players on a team, he's not a captain. When you have 5 of them, it makes sense. When you have 10, it's too many. I think these guys, now the one thing, you know these guys well, Brandon, right? You know all those guys you mentioned, right? Is Daniel Jones a big vocal leader?
No. But he's a captain.
Is Andrew Thomas a big vocal leader?
No.
Okay. Is Dexter Lawrence a big vocal leader?
He can be, yes.
I mean, I think he can be when he needs to be, but he's not one of those guys. You know, you've been around plenty of guys on defense who can't stop talking. He's not one of those guys. You know, Casey Kreider is a long snapper. You know, he's talkative with the kicker and the punter, but you know, so you know, Bobby Okereke is one of those media talking, you know, big profile guys. So it's a different kind of 5, you know, captaincy group. You know, some of the better players, you know, Daniel Jones is the quarterback, so I guess he has to be a captain. So yeah, but I think 5 is right. 10 was too many.
Yeah, it's an earn it year for like a Brian Burns. It'd be hard for Brian Burns to come in and they give them the C. It's kind of like the Hassan Riddick situation where it's like you're coming into a team, so you kind of got to prove yourself this year. I know you've done some great things in the league already, but you kind of got to prove yourself. So next year they should at least be at 7 because Brian Burns and Kayvon should be captains next year. Kayvon should have that type of year and grow that much to where he wears that C next year. Let's give a quick and be very general in terms of the season preview, early season preview, Paul, because we don't know what this team can be, and there's no point of talking about November when we don't even know what they're going to be in September just yet. So I know the record I would want for them to start off, and that's kind of like 2-2, but it's the how they get there or how they get to that 2-2 that scares me. They start with the Vikings at home, got to go to the Commanders, you got to go to Cleveland to play the Browns, and then you got a Thursday night matchup when you host the Cowboys. Again, 2-2 would be cool, but since there's 2 NFC opponents in there, you don't want those 2 losses to come to the Commanders and the Cowboys. But again, with them being such a young squad, if they can sneak out a win in Cleveland, I think they should beat the Vikings, even though the Giants are a young squad, but Sam Darnold, no TJ Hawkinson. You like your chances there, but does 2-2 sound about right? And what do you think? I see you smiling. What do you think about the Giants' chances early in the season?
Well, look, I'll put it this way. Every week, the team that's playing the Giants looks on the schedule and said, this is a week for us to get better. This is a week of us to fatten up because we got the Giants this week. I mean, that's just the way it is. I mean, the Vikings are coming in here for the opener, and they will have no doubt that they can beat the Giants. Okay, I'm not saying they will. You know, we just have to look at it from the flip side sometimes, right?
Yep.
The league. You know, sometimes you get the Jets are going Monday night to play the 49ers, right? I mean, probably the only more difficult assignment would be to go play the Chiefs on the road, right, at this point. So the league did not do that to the Giants. At home, 1 o'clock, the Vikings is a game that, I mean, you look at what will the point spread be? I haven't even looked at it yet. I guess the Giants will be favored very close, right? I guess, right? Yeah. So yes, there is a pathway for the Giants to have a decent start with the Vikings and then the Commanders. The Commanders will have a rookie quarterback, Jaden Daniels, and the Giants have historically the last 4 or 5 years the only NFC East team they've been able to handle other Commanders. But you never know, right? So yeah, I mean, but it's also 2-2 is how you look at it. I mean, imagine if the Giants get off to a 2-0 start. You know, those are 2 of the weaker teams on their schedule, it looks like. So if they're 2-0, I don't think you're going to go into week 3 and say, just lose the next 2 games and you'll be fine, right? Yeah. Cleveland on paper is better than them. The Cowboys, they have just not been able to beat and often have not been able to hang with. That's a Thursday night game, the first of 2. For some god-awful reason, the first of 2 Thursday night games for the Giants, right? They also play in Dallas on Thanksgiving. And I know the reason why, because Giants-Dallas night games have bonkers ratings, so I get it, right? I get it. I was in Arlington 3 years ago when they played on Thanksgiving, and I had to celebrate Thanksgiving in Jerry Jones country, watching get beat. But yes, I think the first month offers a pathway for them to have some success. And as we saw in 2022, when you win the opener, it opens up a lot of possibilities. It really does. You know, Brian Daboll's debut as a head coach they had a very tough assignment at Tennessee, and they were losing that game, and they score, and he goes for two, very bold move. Saquon Barkley runs it in, and then, they miss a field goal at the end, the Titans, and the Giants win a rousing opening victory, and that catapulted them into the season. What happened last year? They were not ready to play and got clobbered 40-0 to the Cowboys, and that catapulted them into the season the wrong way. So I would agree with you. 2-2 is, put it this way, if they're not 2-2 after 4 games, it's going to be problems. If it's worse than that.
Yeah, most definitely. But that's a wrap. We can finally seal the deal and close the door to training camp. It's like the season. It's the longest 11 days for the players. Like I guess for the fans as well. Before a player, you're waiting for that. You just want to get to the game prep week, and then you want to get through that week healthy. And it's like the season's here. Giants football is back. Make sure you guys tune in with us next week, because we are going to have our Week 1 episode of the Blue Rush preview show. Paul, Lawrence Tynes, and myself are going to dive into the storylines and the X's and O's for Giants versus Vikings. Thanks for watching Blue Rush, guys.